the next 2 hours. The agenda is going to be tonight that we're fortunate to have Jeremy Ramage with the union. He's a union city commissioner. He's going to be talking a lot about the development that's been going on in 42. I know there's been a lot of questions about what's going in there, what's happening, so he will be able to address that. We have County Commissioner Chet who will be here tonight, who's going to be talking a lot about our road plans, things that are coming up. Specifically, we can talk about Frogtown Chambers and the development along Richwood, which I'm sure everybody is really curious about. And then I will lastly finish briefly with some information from the state, some legislative update. We still are currently in session. We're just on veto days right now. We'll go back April 12th and 15th. But before we get started, I wanted to recognize the other elected officials that are here. So Senator Jay Williams is back there. And then we have Representative Steve Rawlings right up here in the front. As we go through tonight, what we're going to ask you to do is hold your questions to the end, because some of the questions may be answered, they may overlap. So we're just going to say that to the end, but I assure you, you will have plenty of time to ask questions, and we will be there to answer them on these specific topics. So thank you, and we'll start off this evening with Jeremy.
Welcome, everybody. Again, so I'm Jeremy Ramage with the City of Union. So those of you that didn't know that we had a commission, we do. So we have a mayor and 4 commissioners. I know you all here in Triple Crown actually sit outside of the city limits. So that's probably why a lot of you don't see a lot of the announcements come out, things like that. But we are in the local magazine that comes out for the HOAs. So you will see some of our announcements in there. I do welcome you to get onto our website. I think we have Facebook, Instagram, all your fancy social media ones that you can get into, and it gives some of our events. But I was asked tonight to come and give a little bit of a background of what I know in regard to what's happening inside the City of Union limits. And so what I'd like to start with is the Promenade property, which I'm sure all of you are well familiar with. But what we have done is we've gone and looked at the different properties. Sorry, give me 1 second, get my cheat sheets. Go over each of the lots. So if you're not aware, so the Promenade property is broken into basically 11 lots. They have begun on a number of them. In particular,
there's a laser pointer on that thing too if you want to.
Okay. And I'll go left to right. We'll start with UDF. So UDF is already underway, right? It's completed. I think the opening was roughly 4 months ago, give or take. So UDF property is there. So that we'll call lot number 1. Okay, lot number 2 and 3 is to be determined. You may have heard in some of the papers or other avenues that is where the Aldi was proposed to go. So that was actually declined by the commission, and so Aldi will not be going there. The main emphasis of that was it was not in accordance with the original plans, which were basically standalone buildings with multiple tenants. So that would have taken up 2 of the lots in one complex. That was the reason for vetoing that one down. Lot number 4 is a multi-tenant facility. Right now it's slated to be Schlotsky's Deli and 3 other tenants to be named in the future. Lot number 5 is the same, another multi-tenant building, tropical smoothie, yoga studio, and again, 2 additional tenants to be named. One of the tenants will have a drive-through. And number 6 is Goodwood Brewing. There's a nail salon and a med spa. 7 is to be determined. Lot number 8 should be a Chick-fil-A. I think that's yet to be determined, but that was slated to be a Chick-fil-A. Lot number 9, again, is to be determined. Lot 10 is 5 tenants that are not named yet. And then on the far left side of your screen is lot 11, and that right now is slated to be a Fifth Third Bank. And I believe that's supposed to be slated to have 1 drive-through and an ATM lane, I believe. Okay, so those are the ones that are going in there. I will say there's been some discussion clearly at the latest meetings about the vision of the Promenade and what it was really meant to be with the high-end restaurants and things of that nature that was somewhat promised with that development. I will say in the briefings that we've gotten, it was a challenge, right? And they always go back to the high-end chains need foot traffic. They need the amount of people at the sites to be able to maintain a lunch business and a business, a dinner business and things of that nature. They weren't really able to secure that. So right now we don't truly know what's going to be in the additional tenant spaces, but we're hopeful and we're optimistic that it is going to be something a little bit higher end in those. We just don't know yet. Okay. Let's see. Moving on, that again just shows the overview of what the lot numbers are. Basically, the far southern lot is UDF, which is 1, and then they move north to lot 11. The only other change to the Promenade property that we're aware of, and that we're not in the loop, is you'll see some of the, I call them townhomes or row homes that are slated to be on that property. There was a minor alteration to them. Basically, instead of having 3 units in a building, they're going to have 4. It didn't really change the size of the building itself, it just changed the footprint of each of the units. Okay, and that was a minor modification, I believe, came through about a month ago now, if I remember right. Okay. I'm going to move on. So those of you know where the city building is, across the street from that is the Grammas property. That is slated to be apartments, and then below it is what was described as high-end retail and a restaurant. We don't truly know what that looks like at this point. The renderings have been submitted. I believe this has gone to Boone County Planning. I don't believe it's fully through that process yet. But again, that will be right next to Harmony. You all know where that empty lot is. I think there's been a lot of ground excavation there. We're actually extending Brilliance Avenue, so it actually comes through from the circle. You'll come through that, down the loop, and then it'll tie back into 42. And the intent of doing that is to tie this property in to basically the rest of the community, so it's walkable. We always talk about things being more walkable, drivable, things like that. With Brilliance Avenue dead ending after that circle there when you get to Bristow, it was kind of cumbersome, right? So it wasn't accessible the way that we thought it should be, so we are extending that road. Another one to come up, so there's been a lot of news or a lot of angst about what's coming, what's the timeline on Braxton. So everybody knows that Graders is there. Graders was the first one. So Rich and them really put their building up quick, got in the loop, and it's fantastic. So the 2 other partners going in there are Braxton Brewing and Dewey's Pizza. In addition, I believe Braxton partners with, it's a florist, but I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It may also be in there. I think it complements the unit when there's downtime during the day. I think the florist is busy 8 to 3, and then after that, kind of the brewery kind of gets going on its wind. But Braxton should be getting started in May of this year, and probably finish up in May of 25 at this point. But that's their forecast. So I put a couple renderings on here of Braxton. As you'll see, really the nicest view, in my opinion, really looks nice coming from 42 south to west. It's a really good facet going into the street. But that should be moving full steam ahead. I believe all that is through the Planning Commission at this point. And again, there are some signage issues going on in regard to, I believe, the county ordinance, and I'd have to be corrected. I could be a little off, but the county requires there only be a certain size sign, X amount of feet from the road, and X amount of colors, designs on buildings, things like that all have to be approved. I believe that's going through the process now. Because in particular, you'll see Braxton, Graders is another good example. They really try to do a little bit different signage on their buildings. I don't think there'll be any problems with that. But anyway, this is kind of the design on Braxton. Just list the same kind, that is going to be Chet's on that one, so I'll go back. The only other property I'd like to brief you on tonight is, so you're all aware, you're going to be briefed on the one out front here in your community. There is another plot that sits outside of Plantation, where Plantation meets up with 42. Currently, that's the St. Elizabeth's building. To the left of that is that open lot. I believe that goes to Farmview, is the road that goes down into the community. Only a very thin portion of that is actually in the city limits, but outside of that is Florence. Our understanding is that's going to be another grocery. Our understanding is going to be very similar to what you're getting here. Can't say that officially, I don't really know, but the nudge is that that's probably likely. So you're going to have a couple different grocery chains all within a, call it a 3-mile radius, for lack of better, probably 3 miles of that. So we're going to have a pretty wide variety of grocery chains to shop at. Other than that, I think that's it. The other exciting news for us is, so if you go across Catty Corner to where the city building is, we did buy a 22-acre parcel of property last year, maybe a little over a year ago. That is going to become the new Union Park. It should be called Fowler Creek Park. That will probably be coming out in an announcement very shortly. We have a parks committee at the City Union. They're diligently working on the amenities that are going to go in there. We're working on the timeline, when that's going to start. There will also be a multi-purpose building there. If you remember, maybe some of you do, the old firehouse. There used to be a long time ago plays and things done. You could rent that out, do birthday parties. We decided to sell that many years ago. But we're going to get back into the park and having a multi-purpose building where hopefully we can get back to having some of those, having the Easter egg hunt, having the breakfast with Santa, doing a lot of those activities where we're in a bigger building to have it done. Right now we move around to Union Presbyterian and a few other churches that are willing to help us, but we really don't have a place of our own to call home for those activities. So it will be part of that. In addition, there's discussion right now in regard to what does that mean for the City of Union building. Those of you that have driven by there, pretty small building. We are expanding staff. We want to expand our services to the citizens. So there will likely be a multi-component to that building. We're not sure of the build-out phase yet, but it will likely be multi-purpose for that and part of the city functions for the administrative piece. The renderings of that, if you're interested, will likely be finalized, or some of the preliminary ones anyway, will be done by the 4th of July. We have the Union fireworks that are, I think, the weekend before the 4th of July, maybe 2 before. I have to look at the dates in particular, but we always try to do it before the 4th of July. We'll have a booth there that'll have the renderings of the park. You'll be able to see kind of the citizen feedback and what the committee has come up with for the amenities there. But I think you'll find that it's family friendly. It's going to have stuff designed for music and food trucks, possibly some kind of water feature like a splash pad or something for the kids. But we're going to try to keep it as, I guess, nature, as much of nature as possible, where we're not going to make it a big concrete jungle. I think the vision is to have it walkable, have trees, landscape, brush, stuff like that you can go around and have a nice time with your family. But again, we haven't settled on the final renderings. They will be ready in June, mid-June, late June, something like that for your feedback. So again, we welcome all that. We'll be asking for everybody's feedback on what you think of the ideas. We can always make some modifications as we go. Again, our hope, our anticipation is to begin to kind of break ground on that before the end of this year, knowing that a park is probably going to be a 3 to 5 year build out in phases of what that looks like. But first and foremost, we want to get everything laid out so we can start getting the groundwork done and really kind of begin to understand where the utilities need to go and things of that.
So my name's Chet. I'm one of the Boone County Fiscal Court Commissioners, and I want to touch on just a couple of things here real quick. Roughly, where is everybody coming from? We have folks from Triple Crown here. How about Frogtown? How about Richwood or Chambers Road area? Okay, anybody outside of that area? Okay. This was intended to be focused around those areas. But one thing I'd like to mention is we have, on the Fiscal Court, the way a Fiscal Court works, anybody here anybody not know what the Boone County Fiscal Court is? Okay, everybody's pretty familiar. So our commissioners, even though we have to come from an area, and this is my district, District 2, we actually represent the entirety of the county. So we should be able to at least look up answers for you for any area of the county. So if you have questions that's not in the specific area, still feel free to reach out and we can answer that for you. I put up some sign-up sheets out here. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff tonight, but I have a ton of files available for anybody that's interested in it. If you put your email down on this sheet or send me an email, my card's over here with my email on it, I can send you a download link and you can see all the detailed files on any of the projects that we're talking about tonight for the most part. If it's available, it's on there. Some of them aren't available yet. Some people like to just kind of scroll through those and see the history on the properties and things like that. All that, if it's public record, I have no problem sending it to you. Or actually, if it's not public record, I'll still send it to you. So feel free to send me an email if you have a question. My cell phone number is on there. Contrary to what some people might say, I actually do answer my cell phone and text. And so if you call me, text me, or email me, I will get back to you. Might not be that week, but I'll get back to you. A couple things I want to talk about here before we get started on some of the projects, because we are talking about land use projects and things like that, but there's some other things that have come up here recently from a county perspective. One of those that you might have seen in the news is something called a TID, or a Transportation Improvement District. So in Kentucky, we don't have TIDs, or haven't until recently. Transportation Improvement District is kind of one of those special purpose, they call it SPGE, special purpose government entity. It's new to Kentucky. It was authorized in 2021 or 2022 by legislative action, and hasn't been adopted by any county until recently. Boone County was the first person to adopt this concept of a TID, and it's basically the formation of a board, an entity that can be used as, and this is just a short version of it, kind of a go-between for funding for different kinds of funding sources. It was heavily pushed by the county, And I just wanted to make a point to say that I personally am opposed to the formation of the TID. I have been opposed to it. I was vocal about my opposition to it. And I wanted to take a second and explain why that is. It's not about not wanting funding for infrastructure. I think everybody here, we are 100% on the same page that we need funding for infrastructure and we need improvements on our roads and things like that. I oppose the formation of that TID very specifically because I am opposed to the further expansion of government in any form whatsoever. And I think that we have way too many boards and commissions with unelected people that make decisions that affect our citizens and our voters on a daily basis, and they are not accountable to the voter. And I personally am opposed to that, and for that reason I was opposed to the TID. There's a variety of other reasons as well. I will say that in the discussion, we were able to get a number of concessions from the judge executive and the executive staff as they wrote out the ordinance. Each of the commissioners in our county are now able to appoint or nominate our own board member for the TID. It's a 5-person board. The judge executive will get 2. Each commissioner will get 1. And that is not normal. Normally the nominations of committee, commission, board members is an executive function. However, the specific language of the KRS when this was written differently than every other one. And so we were able to leverage that and make it so that the commissioners get 1 theoretically from their district. And for me, that will be somebody that's just a normal everyday person, not somebody that's beholden to some sort of special interest group involved. Another thing that we were able to get out of it is the definition of a chamber member. For some reason the law was written to say that the 2 members of the board had to be from the Chamber of Commerce. To me, infrastructure and roads is a government function. It's not a private industry function. And so, to me, that was no different than putting in there that one of the members of the TID had to be a high school football coach. They're completely unrelated. There was no reason to have the Chamber of Commerce involved in this in any way or shape or form. I think that I personally believe that the Chamber of Commerce spends too much time on things non-related to supporting our business and our industry, more social issues than business issues, and I think they need to get their priorities straight. We were able to get a concession there in defining what the chamber meant. And so in this case, any business or business industry association would qualify. So we're going to be able to have a broader spectrum of people to pick from for that TID. The other thing that's come up here, so that's enough on TID. I can answer questions about that later. For now, we are going to be forming the board here soon, hopefully by the end of April. And they are going to be forming their bylaws, and we got oversight of their bylaws, which is nice. So at least there, the fiscal court, those members that are accountable to the voter have some recourse. The other thing that came up recently is the whole work NKY or workforce something. There was some initiative that another commission or board or entity that they wanted to create focused on workforce development. There is no question whatsoever that we have a workforce shortage in Northern Kentucky and in Boone County. And again, for me, when I opposed this, and actually Commissioner Kathy Flagg also opposed it, and we were the only county in the area to vote against it. So right now, the formation of this entity does not include Boone County. The purpose of it was supposed to be on strategies and things related to workforce development in our county. This directly impacts business growth, infrastructure growth, everything else. But again, I didn't oppose it because I don't think we need workforce development. I think we do. But there's about 30 entities in Northern Kentucky already focused on workforce initiatives. In my opinion, that's too many, and one of those entities should already be focused on taking the lead on these things. I don't think that we need to form yet another government entity. I think that's government solution generally. Identify a problem, form an entity with no accountability, sick them on the problem, and then never follow up with them again. And I'm just opposed to that. So I just wanted to explain those two things since both of them are related to infrastructure development and they've both come up here recently at the Fiscal Court. The other thing I'll mention is the comprehensive land use plan. Anybody not know what the comp plan is? Okay, so in Boone County, and this property down here where the Publix is going in is a perfect example of this. That used to be a nice farm field, rolling hills, nice fence. Everybody loved leaving Triple Crown and seeing that. Next thing you know, it's getting bulldozed and a grocery store's going in there, and everybody got up in arms about why is this happening? How did we not know about this? That property was zoned for that back in the 80s. So 40 years ago, that property was zoned for a grocery store. And theoretically, any person that's bought property in this area in the last 40 years could have seen that and known that by just looking into it. How land is used in the future is determined by something called the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Because we have a Planning and Zoning Commission in our county, we are required by law to have a long-term plan that says in the future, this is where we anticipate our land use to be and what we anticipate properties to look like. It's not property specific. The plan is not specific to each property. It's kind of a broad brush stroke, but there are boundaries. The plan, it can be found on our county website, and it is two parts. It's a map that shows you what the future looks like. It's a colored map similar to one of these right here that shows you, as an example, the blue is industrial, the red is commercial or something, yellow is low density residential, orange is high density. There's different color codes. It shows you on a map image, what does our future land use look like? And then there's a narrative that goes along with it. Every 5 years, we have to do an update to that comprehensive land use plan. It is the most effective time for the average citizen to step up and have input on what their land around you looks like. So that process is going on right now. The Planning and Zoning Commission and the county do an absolutely horrendous job of advertising this. Most people don't know it exists, let alone that they can have input on it. It is critical that if you have an opinion about land use in our county, which, by the way, the formation of local government in the first place is primarily oriented around land use. If you have an opinion at all, it's really important that you get involved in this process. And your input is on the record. It is taken into consideration, theoretically. And if you don't provide that input now, later it's too late. When the plan is formed, it is too late. The Planning Commission, anybody here fought the Planning Commission over something at some point or another? I have. So if you fought the Planning Commission, you know at that point you're almost fighting, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back. They've already got all the data, they've already moved forward on this, all the players are already informed, except you. Now's the time to get involved in that. If you would like information on that, send me an email and I will get you tied in. Jill's up here, she's doing this. A few other players have been in here for a while, so working on this. So we can all help you get oriented around that, providing input on that. The Planning and Zoning Commission, just for clarification, is not a Boone County entity. It is a separate, independent agency. It is not part of the Boone County government. It's not part of the executive branch or the legislative branch. People want to take the blame out on us, the elected officials, but the only input we have is to confirm the nominations by the judge executive to that board. That is it. They operate independently. They have their own set of KRS 100 that they operate under. So just to be clear, it's not local government. I can't walk down to planning and zoning and tell them how to do their job. The law was written back in the 60s. We formed ours back in the 60s. It's been here for a long time. All right, so a couple things here that I wanted to talk about. And did everybody get a handout? If you didn't get a handout, they're over here on this table. I'd like to go over just a couple of things. First thing we're going to talk about is, since we're already talking about it, is this process flow. It's a little colored sheet here. And I'm going to only briefly touch on this because I think it's pretty self-explanatory by following along on this sheet. This tells everybody here when you can have input on a particular project that's coming up before the Planning Commission. And actually, let me provide some insight, I guess, on my approach to this, because I've already gotten chewed up a couple times for how I voted on a couple of different properties. In my opinion, land rights are paramount in our country. Our original Constitution drafts were life, liberty, and property, not life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It's critical to the formation of our country. And I think that government has no business being involved in your property and how you use it, etc. but that goes both ways. If you have a piece of property and your neighbor doesn't like what you're doing, they have no input on your property either. I mean, it's your property. So the difference is if we have established zoning laws. This is how I approach land use decisions when they come to the fiscal court. You can almost be guaranteed to know how I'm going to vote on any particular property based on these two principles. If you have a piece of property and your property is zoned a certain way and you want to do something that's allowable under that zoning, in my opinion, the local government or your neighbors cannot tell you how to do that. If you have a piece of A1 zone property right smack dab in the middle of the neighborhood and you want to do a pig farm, it's your right to do it, and your neighbors cannot tell you not to. The difference is if you want to change the zoning of your property. So now you want to go from an A1 to a C3, or you want to go from a residential property to a commercial or industrial, whatever it is. If you want to change the zoning of your property, all of your neighbors have theoretically made their investment decisions in their property based on how yours is zoned. And as long as the future land use plan doesn't say that that's the way we want it to be, it doesn't matter what you want to do with your property, that you want to change it. Your neighbor's opinion now matters more than yours because they've made a decision, an investment decision on their property based on how your property is zoned. And so that's how I approach land use decisions when they come to the fiscal court. They come to us in the form of an ordinance, and it always requires 2 readings, and we always solicit public input on those. So that's just kind of the methodology. In order to have opinion or have input on something, though, this is the process. This is outlined in the KRS, but I drew up this little chart just to make it easier. I also conveniently put on here all of the emails and cell phone numbers for the people that make decisions on this, so you can reach out to them directly if you'd like. The first thing where you get input is the public hearing. So let's say your neighbor has a piece of property. A lot of these ones that we're going to go over tonight started like this. Your neighbor wants to do something with the property. The first thing you notice is a little white and black sign sitting out by the road that says zone change or something, and you go, what is that? I don't know. That's the announcement of the public hearing. They are not going to send it out by email. They are not, even though all this technology exists, they're not going to send it by email. They're not going to text you. They're not going to call you. If you're an immediately adjacent property, you will get a letter, but that's only if you're immediately adjacent. So that's the notice that there is going to be a public hearing. That public hearing is the only time that you can come in and provide your input on the record. The decisions on land use follow a quasi-legal process. So there's the formation of a record, there's input, there's discussion, and then there's a vote. The record is only formed in that initial public hearing, that first green box that you see here. That input can be provided by calling the Planning Commission and telling them, sending them a letter, sending them an email, or showing up at the public hearing and letting your opinion be heard. And that opinion could be anything. It could be for the project or it could be against the project. But once that record is closed, that public hearing is now done. At that point, nothing additional can be added to the record. It doesn't matter whether you think of something else or you missed it because you were out of town, nothing else will be considered on the record, and only those concerns that are brought up are the ones that are considered in the decision for or against that particular zone change. Once that public hearing is closed, the Planning Commission is a 15-member commission. Not all of them are always there. The way it currently works, I believe, Boone County gets 6 nominations, Florence gets 6, Walton gets 2, and Union gets 1. In my opinion, that is completely backwards, and that Florence is severely overrepresented, Union is underrepresented, and the county is underrepresented. But it requires all 4 bodies to agree to a change in the original 1960 Memorandum of Understanding in order for that to change. Right now, that's what we're stuck with. Though there's also something called a zone change subcommittee. And the zone change subcommittee is a 5-person committee. After the Planning Commission hears public input on a proposal, it goes to that zone change committee to work with the developer or owner to mitigate any of the concerns that are brought up. Theoretically, they should focus on resolving any of those concerns that are brought up, or at least determining that those concerns are not, important enough, I guess. The Zone Change Committee takes a vote on recommending action to the full commission. The zone change committee of 5 will say we are going to recommend for or against this proposal. That recommendation goes to the planning commission again for a final vote. All the public is able to attend, and the planning commission votes on that yes or no. They do not have to follow the recommendation of the zone change committee. But whatever that planning commission recommends actually carries the weight of a tie-breaking vote. That gets forwarded on to the legislative body. It's in the City of Union, it's the City of Union Commission, Walden, Florence, etc. Or if it's in Greater Boone County where the majority of people live, it comes to the Fiscal Court. As an ordinance recommendation, the planning commission will say in the form of an ordinance, we recommend that this property get changed from agricultural to industrial or agricultural to residential. When it comes to the Fiscal Court, we also then hold a public hearing. You can't introduce anything new on the record, but you can voice your opinion for or against the issue. Now, this has been the process forever, and that's the way it's outlined on this document. But I did actually work hard myself to get a change to our process. And we actually, the other 2 commissioners agreed to this. So we actually, at the planning commission, or at the Fiscal Court, will now sometimes hold our own public hearing where we can introduce new evidence on the record. We're allowed to do that under the law. According to Judge Moore, in 30 years, we've never done that. Don't know why, but we're allowed to do it. We are doing it now. We've done it at least once already. We will always inquire to the court, do we or do we not want to hold a public hearing now? If you would like a public hearing on a particular issue, you need to let us know, and we will hold one. That way, new evidence can be introduced to the record. Then we hold a first reading of the ordinance and then a second reading and a vote. There have been many times when something that came through recommended yes or no by the planning commission was overturned by the Fiscal Court. We do have the final say, and same with the commissions, the cities as well. So just because let's say you were opposed to something, just because you lost in planning and zoning does not mean you will lose the Fiscal Court. But it does require a majority of the full court. So in our case, 3 out of 4 have to vote one way in order to overturn that recommendation. If it is a tie, 2 members for and 2 against, the weight, or the planning commission recommendation carries the weight of that. Does that make sense? So I wanted to talk about the process because a lot of people don't understand it. It's really important. Again, all these documents are going to be available in that link I can send you when we're done if you reach out to me. All right, let's talk about some properties real quick. There's 2 documents there. One's called Richwood Projects and one's a map. We're just going to go through a couple here. Or we'll go through all of them, but I'm just going to kind of give you the highlights. Some of these, for those who were here last time, these are basically the same. When you look at, let's just start at the top on number 1. They correspond with the numbers on the map. So right at the end of Frogtown connector, right there by Frogtown Rd is number 1. Number 1. That's a new submission. Nothing's been started that I'm aware of. It's a relatively small commercially designated building for a United Motion Dance Academy. Based on the initial proposal, that's what it's supposed to be. What? Oh, it is already there?
Yeah, there's a sign up.
Never mind. I'm thinking of a different property. All right, so that one's already there. You guys are aware of that one. We'll leave that at that. Let's go across the highway over to number 2. Number 2 is, that one says site plan approval of 5-4. I was thinking about this next one. So this one has not been approved yet. Number 2, this is Old Dominion Freight Line. They're putting in a big commercial building there. It's not too big. It's only 33,000 square feet-ish, but it does have a lot of dock bay doors. It is an industrial area back in that area already. They're currently evaluating the site plan. In addition, one of the things you should notice about that is the 205 tractor trailer spaces. So it's not going to be just an industrial warehousing building. It's also going to have over 200 trucks parked outside or trailers parked outside, theoretically, at least a space for it. That one's going there at the end of Carbon Way. I don't have any more information on that one. It's a brand new submission, so I don't have any documentation on that one. But I can add that as soon as I get it to that download link. Number 3, still going back to Frogtown Connector, this is the Town Place Suite, so this is a hotel that's going in there. Again, site plan is under review, so there's nothing official there. And number 4 right next to it's Cattleman's. I think you guys have seen that already. I think it's basically, it's either done or really close to being done, is my understanding. There's been some hypothetical discussion about another restaurant maybe going in that area. You know, some people have tossed around the idea of a Drake's and things like that. We don't know anything about that yet, but it is possible. You know, my opinion on that road area, and we're going to talk about this a little bit on the screen here. This whole Frogtown Connector area, in my opinion, needs to be a commercially oriented area. Actually, let me see if I can have. Yeah. So if you look at a map, aerial map of this area, this is just my opinion. It's hypothetical. I think that this area east of the highway is ripe for redevelopment. Some of these buildings that are over here, like the White House and stuff, are a little bit on the raggedy side. And I think that this area is ripe for redevelopment. And what I would like to see is this pilot over here. I would like to see an orientation of these pilot activities more towards residential personal vehicles, and the development of this road here more towards commercial type things that directly support the existing population in the area. So not something that is more apartments or things like that increases population, but commercial type things that target the existing population. There's, you know, you guys remember that this little strip mall here with the little coffee shop and all that stuff. Back in the 90s, there was actually a lawsuit that this whole property right here is supposed to be a continuation of the strip mall, again, supporting commercial type things that support the existing population. I think that if we can work with this pilot, which by the way, this property over here, one of these properties is owned by a pilot as well, this one over here. I think there's opportunity to try to focus all of the truck traffic to the east side of the highway and all of the residential traffic to the west side of the highway. As you guys know, this is a nightmare, you know, getting stacking up right here. Since we're here talking about it, we're gonna go out of order here. So if you notice a bunch of construction work going on right now at that pilot across the road, it actually was very convenient because they had to replace all their fuel tanks. And we reached out to them, or the county engineer reached out to them and wanted to talk about the traffic, specifically the truck traffic stacking up. We've known this has been an issue. And they refused to return our call. Eventually we got in touch with somebody because it's a corporate owned, you know, thing. And we suggested to them that they stop allowing traffic, from truck traffic to come in from this direction on Frogtown Connector. They said that doesn't work for them, and we said it's not an option. So now what's going to happen is we worked with them directly. We are going to put up, I believe, at first some temporary, like those big 2,000-pound concrete blocks or whatever they are, some temporary barriers here that prohibit direct in right-hand turn access by a semi-truck, so it's going to be a slightly smaller access there. Theoretically, it's going to prohibit them from physically being able to turn in, but it will allow them egress out. And in the future, there'll be something more permanent there. But for now, what we're going to try to do is, and we just approved at last fiscal court meeting, some additional funding from the county to widen this frontage road here. So this frontage road now is going to be completely resurfaced and widened to allow for trucks to come in and go all the way up Frogtown Connector and turn onto this long frontage road so that their queue stacks up here rather than on Frogtown Connector. Additionally, there's going to be an extra space on the sides for them to park on the sides there so that they can even get more traffic down that frontage road. Theoretically, they're going to come through here, they're going to do their fueling, hit the scales, and then they're going to come out and leave. This may require a signal change, we're aware of that, some timing change, so that's part of that plan. And then I also think that this old site right here, Actually, hang on, which one is it? Yeah, this one right here, this old site that used to be a hotel. Would be a great location potentially for parking trucks because it's nowhere near any residential and it's not being used currently, but we don't control that. The county has no say on that. Again, I'd like to really focus on sticking truck traffic on the west side of the highway. So since we were talking right here, I figured I'd talk about that. Let me know if you have any questions on it. That's currently the plan, and that work should be done this summer, theoretically. And again, my thought on land use and things like that, again, is that this whole road on Frogtown Connector really should be oriented around commercial type things that support the existing population. All right, so moving on to the next one, the TA truck stop right here in this area, that's all done. I believe we've seen some relief on Ridgewood. I live down on Chambers, just so you guys know. I live down in this area, so I'm very familiar with what this looks like down here. I think I've noticed some relief in the area. It's still not great, but it's better than nothing. TA truck stop seems to be working. That was pretty much done. Number 6 is provisional living, or provision living. So if you look at the map that I gave you down here, that's number 6. That's on the right as you're going towards the highway. It's directly across from the Heritage Bank, or the Fifth Third Bank there. That one is not done. Both phases are, I think either both phases have been started or both phases have been approved, but it is a 2-phase process. It's a number of independent living facilities, assisted living facilities, a couple of attached homes. There's a lot of different little mini amenities in there, and there's the potential for, as part of the original site plan approval, there was supposed to be some sort of like mental, or not mental, memory something care center. So, and I don't believe that started yet. Let's see. If you look at those little, if you look at those designators, by the way, on this document, ZMA stands for zoning map approval. GP is grading plan, IMP is improvement plan, and SP is site plan. So that's what those things mean. So number 7 is this is from last year. It's the Section 35 of Triple Crown. It's a bunch of individual residential lots. It's right there on the right side of the Triple Crown coming in. Those are in the works. They're still building them. Obviously, number 8 is the Publix that you're aware of already. This is the Publix early presentation of the Publix plan. If you look at a bird's eye view of the area, this road, that little road that they're stacking all their industrial truck or their construction trucks and vehicles on and things like that, that will eventually extend all the way up and connect. So Man of War eventually will connect right here in the future, all the way up. I think they're working on like Justify and some other areas up there. There's also going to be a connection across and behind the Publix over here onto the Triple Crown access road there. And then I believe if I didn't check on my way in, but they have done already, I believe they're going to punch through that center and you're going to have access over the residential lots over here. So there'll be a cut through the median there in the middle. This is going to be the main Publix building, but there's actually a small building next to it over here. That one is, there's 3 potential buildings going to be on that lot. The Publix and the liquor store will be in the main lot. This one, they don't know what the tenants are going to look like yet, but I believe there's 3 smaller occupancy buildings right there up against that Man of War Road. And then actually this lot right here on the corner there by the roundabout is yet to be determined, but something's going to go there. There's going to be another building in the future right there on the corner, theoretically. And then obviously, look at the map, don't look up here, but number 8 is the left side of that little stub out construction road. And as you guys have noticed, that's cleared as well. That's actually going to be a Saney's office building. That site plan has, not, I think is still under review. The initial, that one has just gotten introduced. The reason why you've seen it cleared already was because of a deal with Publix for dirt transfer back and forth between the two sites. But that is, at this point, slated to be an office building slash possibly some sort of care facility, like an urgent care facility, 341 vehicle parking spaces. It's going to be, that's the other one. Office medical building is what it is. And actually that one may have 3 separate lots as well. There may be 2 additional buildings, smaller ones on the site. But again, all they've done is their initial grading. Plus, there's no proposal yet on what that is. When we know more, we'll let you know. And then behind that, number 9 is additional, number 10 is additional residential. I don't know if they're working on that right now. Again, that was something approved as a zone change way back in the day, in the 80s. And it's just part of the Triple Crown continuation. And then if you go all the way back up to the top, one of the last things here is number 11. That's over on Baeten's Nursery. If anybody's ever been there, you know they've got an absolute nightmare related to parking and things. So that's just a continuation of their lot there, so that they have additional material storage, freeing up additional parking. All right, so that's all I have on those 2 documents. So a lot of you have heard about this possibility of, actually I take it back, I'm gonna go back. If you look at the map that I gave you, the printout map, Sutherland is a neighborhood. You can see it there, there's a street there called Sutherland. As you're driving towards Hicks Pike from here, it would be on your left, the nice neighborhood. There has been an application again for what's known as the Jake's Farm there, so that farm on the left after Sutherland. They have applied for a zoning map amendment. A high-density residential, 147 unit apartment buildings with 4 detached single-family homes along Schmidt. This is similar to what they applied for last time. They got turned down. There's Plan B, I believe, is 69 detached single-family lots, which would be basically a continuation of Sutherland. And then on roughly 8,000 square foot lots. And then I think if A and B fail, their Plan C is actually to turn it into a productive farm. If you look at a map, and a couple of these maps up here will show this, but if you look, I think it might be underneath this pile here. If you look at a map, Sutherland is the last higher density residential lot anywhere south or west on the entire Richwood Chambers Road corridor. There is, with one exception. At the very end of Richwood, when it hits Chambers, across from the cemetery, there's a little mini neighborhood there. There is one lot in there that is slightly less than the 2-acre size. Everything else in that whole corridor is estate-sized lots. In my opinion, in our county, we need areas of high density, urban locations, etc., but we also need estate-sized lots. And it's my opinion that that corridor needs to remain that estate-sized lot. What that doesn't mean is that there's people back there that got 40, 50, 100-acre lots that they can't do anything with it. It just means that when they go to develop it, it's my opinion that they need to be in that higher density, the lower density lot sizes, the 2 acres, you know, could be another Hutton Lane or Gaines Way or something like that in those areas. So with that being said, that's what I mean when I'm talking about that Sutherland property too. So think about that. But if you want to have some input on the Sutherland property, for or against, May 1st is the public hearing. So there was some discussion. Everybody's kind of heard the rumor that they might close off this tunnel on Chambers Road. This is a possibility, theoretically. The original impetus behind it was that there's an approved project to widen 71 from 4 lanes to 2, 6 lanes, I believe, 3 and 3, from Louisville all the way. Jay, yes or no, is that correct?
3 and 3 from
3 and 3
Louisville all the way down. That's 3. I think they're going to put that ramp is 2 lanes, it goes down to 1. I think what they're talking about is making it 2 lanes all the way up to Ridgewood Road as an exit.
Yeah. So that widening of 71 is the impetus behind closing off this Chambers Road tunnel. As Jay just mentioned, Senator Williams, this road here is 2 lanes going down to 1, and they're talking about potentially extending it all the way to Richwood Road as an exit. However, there is some potential relief here in that this is already 4 and 4 at this point before it hits Chambers. So there might be a scenario where they're willing to consider, not adding in that exit lane all the way down. I'm not sure.
Yeah, the 3 to 3 is really 71 south. That's already 3.
Yep.
3 and 3,
Exactly. 75 already going down is already widened too. So here are the 3 potential scenarios for this road that were originally drafted up. One option was to seal off this tunnel, and the reason why, and what I'm going to give you now is the reasons that have been given to me. I'm not saying I agree with them. Is that this tunnel, as currently engineered, you can't widen that anymore without causing ventilation issues. Basically, they're not going to keep the tunnel. If they widen the highway, they're going to have to do something with the tunnel. Let's start here actually. One option is to seal off the tunnel and use the existing grade of the land to take Chambers Road and run it up over the top of the hill and create a bridge that goes over the highway and back down into Chambers Road. And by the way, my opinion on this is that we maintain east-west access on Chambers Road. I don't want to see this road shut off. I will say that when I called the state and talked to them, they had no interest at all in looking at closing off Chambers Road until Gary Moore called them and asked him to. So this may not necessarily be a guarantee. I don't know what the state's doing. We'll have to talk to them some more, but it may not be a guarantee. So if they close it off, this is one suggestion: put in a bridge all the way across. That would be, by the way, the tallest bridge structure, visible bridge structure, even over the 275 interchange over there in Erlanger. If you look at the topography. Another option is to actually build a bridge there instead of the tunnel. Obviously the main reason why they wouldn't want to do that would be cost, because now they're building a 10-lane bridge versus a 2-lane bridge here. But in my opinion also, it's not about cost, it's about the people that live there and access, etc. Chambers Road would then go underneath as it already does. There's another option, and that is to seal off Chambers Road completely, not maintain that east-west access on Chambers over to 25, and instead to continue steeplechase down here to Chambers to create a back-end loop from the steeplechase neighborhood to Chambers. I'll tell you what my oppositions are to this. My oppositions to this are that I think that maintaining that east-west access is absolutely critical. I'm talking to a lot of people in that area. A lot of folks most folks in that whole area use Walton as their primary source for everything, whether it's the urgent care, the emergency services, grocery store, everything. Now, by doing that, you're going to make it where they have to drive all the way down to Richwood, all the way across the 25 and come down, or go all the way down to Beaver Road and come out to Walton. I'm opposed to that. I'm also opposed to continuation of steeplechase all the way down here because, and I've made my opinion very clear on this, that I think that Chambers Road needs to remain a more rural road in that, I'm not saying don't fix it, I'm just saying it needs to remain a more rural road and we don't need to make it bigger and wider because that brings in more development in the area. It also, once you connect steeplechase down, opens up this whole corridor here for higher density residential development behind the school and brings in potentially access SD1, more incentive for SD1 to bring sewer down to Chambers Road, which if they bring water, it's your option to get on it. If they bring sewer and they tell you you're getting on it, you don't have a choice. They can force you onto sewer with that bill. I'm opposed to sewer coming down Chambers Road. Now there are some other discussions about connecting Chambers Road down to Beaver Road and Mary Grubbs, or the direct connection down to Mary Grubbs. I can't remember if I put in something on that or not. I don't think I did. So we're not going to talk about that at the moment.
I got money
at this point. At this point, I'm opposed to that plan as well, and I have been from the day one. I know that there may be some arguments as to why it's logical, etc. But again, right now, I'm opposed to keeping this to shutting off this tunnel. If we connected Chambers to Mary Grubbs Beaver area and still retain this east-west access, I'd be okay with that potentially, if this property owner was okay with it. But outside of that, I think we should maintain it the way it is. If we go down that Mary Grubbs Beaver Road area in Walton, everybody obviously knows about the wrecks and things that have been there on that exit ramp and fatalities there. We know that's a problem. We're going to talk in a minute about improving that exit ramp, but the long-term plan includes two potential designs for that whole interchange. One of them looks like Richwood just inverted, so that double diamond crossover. But as you can see, it has a pretty significant impact on the residential area and commercial areas over here. I think this is mostly commercial actually. It's actually going to be north of the existing road, or existing bridge. And it just takes up a lot of space. You look at something called the SPUI, the single point urban interchange. This is more like what we have on 18 in Burlington. And this takes up a lot less footprint, and there's a lot less impact to the surrounding property owners in the area. So that's, again, those are just out there. I think I don't even know if there's design money yet. Yes, design money.
There's design money, the second of the biennium, and also I got money, $1.5 million for the third lane on the exit ramp, because it's going to be 5 or 6 years before that's going to be up.
Yeah,
we'll build a third lane, so there'll be 2 lanes left, 1 lane right, that will start construction this year.
I'm gonna bring that up here so you can see it there, Jay, in just a second. So, well, we're gonna go ahead and just dive right into that then, since Jay brought it up. This is the biennial road funding here in areas that impact in Boone County that are kind of in this area we're talking about. So I'm just gonna bring it up to show you what I know about it. First one here, I-75 and KY-14. Actually, I don't know why that one's in there. I didn't mean to bring that one in there. Planning study to evaluate options for reconstructing Ridgewood from Triple Crown to Hicks Pike. If you guys are familiar with that one, you got the new roundabout down to Hicks Pike. There is a potential for, and I think it's in here as well, for Hicks Pike to be improved from Ridgewood to 42. So the state wants to see improved traffic flow from Ridgewood to 42. I think that it should be Hicks Pike versus Ridgewood to 42 the other direction, because that impacts the 2 cemeteries and that Ridgewood farm down there. Theoretically, it would both straighten and take out the Humpties on Hicks Pike. I also am actively trying to discuss getting Chambers Road, which is currently a state road, traded to the state for Hicks Pike. Hicks Pike is currently a county road. I'd like to trade them Chambers for Hicks. I'm not going into detail about it. It's probably a lot more complicated than that, obviously, but so that the state does the Hicks Pike work, we can take care of Chambers. That's just my opinion. I don't know what that intersection of Hicks Pike and Ridgewood is going to look like. I think this money is just for studying, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being another roundabout looking at access.
Study's already been done.
The study's done? What is this money for?
Essentially, when they did the study on whether you're going to take 338 all the way down 338 to 42, or turn up Hicks Pike and do that, that study showed that Hicks Pike was actually less expensive than the referral route. So I don't know anybody that's talking about taking 338 all the way past the church and down there. Everybody's talking about the Hicks Pike, and there's money in the out years for that to make that happen. That's what's going to happen. And at one point, it's a convenient trade because the mileage is almost the same between Chambers as a county, make that a county road, make Hicks Pike a state road. They like to trade miles for miles, and it works. That way you can keep Chambers weight limited as a county road, and Hicks Pike becomes, they wanted to do a 5-lane, but probably a 3-lane road for Hicks Pike that'll connect and serve the area. So that's what's coming next on that, but that planning, you'll see that planning study's in 2024, not fiscal year 2024, which is now, it's almost over. It's already been done.
Not 100% sure what this, not 100% sure what this guardrail thing is over here, but Jay and I talked about the other day, it's probably guardrail maintenance somewhere on Birchwood.
They program all the guardrails now.
Not sure. So Frogtown Road, this is the one that everybody was obviously really upset about. There is money to reconstruct that in FY26.
Yeah. You gotta look at the fund as well. So essentially, that's coming out of SPP. There's a difference between the House and the Senate. We put 980 million of general fund into it, so all of these would have been funded. The House took 400 million out. So anything that says SPP, there's only enough money to build 60% of those. So even though you see $2 million in that plan, there is actually not enough money to build it. It's the Transportation Department or the governor's agency that decides which 60% gets built in the next 2 years.
And Jay's been in this a lot longer. He's going to have a lot more info on these things, but I do want to, for the sake of time, because I do want to be able to answer questions. If you would like to ask specific questions about funding of specific projects, I'm sure he's going to be available afterwards. I just want to let you guys know what money has been identified in Boone County for these particular things. So Frogtown's on there. Beaver Road to Chambers Road, that was what I told you. From Chambers down, that's in there as a plan.
Hold on. That's not just Beaver Road to Chambers. That's actually an extension of 16. It's a 16 bypass. They need to reconstruct 25 going south. Instead of going through Walton on 25, they can't add or make it wider or do anything. 16 where it dead ends just comes over and comes across, goes all the way down and hooks up to Beaver Road, okay? So it's really a west bypass of Walton for 16 and 25. It's not been determined, it may be one of those bridge projects, it may be something else that it will come over, and Chambers will hook up to essentially 60 on that. So you'll have access from Chambers right down in Walton from the west. And that, or you can go over to Kenton County via 16, you'll have access from Chambers to 16. But just that little area, won't run along Chambers.
And you're going to, you'll pick up on the fact that Jay and I have a different opinion on this one. That's okay. Jay has his opinion on it, I have my opinion on it. Mine comes from the motive that I don't want to see this property, this land here on Chambers become industrial.
Yeah, and 16 doesn't affect that.
So I don't want to see this shut off because I don't want to see this become industrial property. I think, is it going to become something? 100%. They're going to do something with that property. I just don't want to see an industrial building there impacting the Chambers Road community.
I got a map of it, if anybody wants to look. Okay.
Chet, you want to go back to Proctor?
Yeah, I'm going to try to find it on my thing here. So, other things, so we talked about Hicks Pike.
Okay.
Expanding the more truck parking on the rest areas is in there, some amount of money. And that's the Hicks Pike project we were just talking about from 42 at Richwood. So the message here is there's money out there for some projects in this particular area. If you have any specific questions about those, we can talk after. A lot of this, as Jay mentioned, they're overfunded, or they're overplanned funding. Over-programmed, so it may not actually come to fruition, depends. And we don't have any decision on the state actions. Can we provide soft input? Possibly, but it's, at the end of the day, it's not a yes or no decision by us, per se. That does not stop you from lighting up all our emails about it, or our phones, because if it's, we get enough, maybe we can pass a resolution at the county level or something indicating our opinion on those things. One thing I'd like to mention, I forgot to mention, is that at the county level, we cover all the residents of Boone County, whether state issues or county issues, cities, everything else. I personally cannot tell you how much I appreciate having representatives here in Boone County that actually listen to the people and not special interest groups. And I very much appreciate Representative Proctor, Representative Rawlings, Representative Towne, that are in right now. They actually listen to their constituents, and I personally appreciate that. Marianne and I and others, we trade emails all the time. Somebody sends us a question, if it's a state issue, I forward it to her. If it's a county issue, they forward it to me. And I think that's what you guys need. I think people are pretty much done with having folks that don't listen to the people and instead just listen to all these special interests. So I appreciate Representative Proctor work down there. It's a very thankless job. They do not pay enough for it. And she puts in a lot of hours, so thank you very much for that. Representative Proctor alluded to staying in the loop on things. I actually have a newsletter that I send out regularly. I wish it was more regularly. I try to send out one every week, but I actually work a full-time job in addition to my full-time job as commissioner. And I have a farm, and I have my 7th kid on the way, and I'm remodeling my house. So I try to respond to emails, and I try to send out my newsletter every week. If you would like to be on that newsletter distribution where you get info going on, I do have a link on the county website where you can go and sign up for my email alerts. Can't figure that out, just text me or send me an email and I can add you to it. And I try to keep people informed on things going on at the Fiscal Court and other stuff. So with that, I actually believe Representative Proctor has an email distribution too. So
Just want to fill you in a little bit about what we're doing in Frankfurt. So it's an even number year. We're in 60 days. We were in since January 2nd. We're out in veto recess, as I said. Interesting, the House filed 838 bills. The Senate filed 380 bills. Before we adjourned, almost at midnight on Thursday of last week, the General Assembly sent more than 160 pieces of legislation to the governor. So they are currently sitting on his desk for review. Likely he will veto a lot of them, but we will go back on the 12th and probably still pass a few more bills and override his vetoes on the 12th and the 15th. What's really interesting in all of this, I hear a lot of frustration. People like, why are we not getting the bills through that we want? The bills I brought are from you all, and I can tell you why. Because the lobbying. This last session broke an all-time record for just 2 months in 2024 of $6.3 million in lobbyists in 2 months. The same time frame last year, in the 30-day session, they spent $5.987 million, so a little bit of an increase for this year. They have a record level of 922 lobbyists and businesses and organizations that were registered in Kentucky, and the lobbyists were paid $5.5 million to influence your legislation. So if you want to know who is the top 5 lobbyists down there, it is the Kentucky Chamber. Most of that money was spent on their lobbyist compensation. The ACLU was our number 2 spender. Number 3 was Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. I'm not quite sure what they do. Number 4 was Greater Louisville, Inc., because half of our bills are about Louisville. And number 5 was the Kentucky Hospital Association, and I can say I'm really proud about that because I think they spent most of it on me. So, well, in the summer alone, they spent $275,000 on a discussion about a task force to look at reforming Certificate of Need. So that's so, you know, unfortunately many of my colleagues are very much pressured by the lobbyists. The lobbyists don't put me in office, and I don't believe they will take me out. So I believe it is our job as your representatives to represent you. And what is our job? I go down there every time. What is my job as a state representative? It's to my constitutional duties. And what are those? To protect life, liberty, and property. And then my moral convictions also guide some of my decisions that I make. So this session, I'm disappointed. Many of the things we want to get through, certainly with KEYS money for homeschools and getting DEI out of the universities, all those things. If we got them across the House, they failed in the Senate, or vice versa. So very little of things I think you guys would find of value. Our constitutional duty this session is to do the budget. So we spent the budget. House Bill 1 is a one-time $2.7 billion appropriation, but it comes from the Budget Reserves Trust Fund, and that goes towards infrastructure and other things like paying down our pensions. We are $40 billion in debt and unfunded pension liability. So we're taking advantage of the money that we have and reinvesting into the pensions to make those solvent. Another thing we voted on is House Bill 6. This is a budget bill. We got into the Senate February 2nd. We got it back to the House after a lot of negotiations on March 28th. I believe the Senate, I think they approved it at 10 o'clock at night on a Wednesday night. Is that pretty accurate, Jay? And then we got it. I didn't get to see a copy of it till 3:30 on Thursday, the 28th, where we had to vote on it that night. So it's like 280 pages. We don't have staff that read that. It's us. And that day I already had 26 or 27 bills that were on the orders of the day that we're going to be voting on. And unlike some, I actually read the bills before I vote on them. So this one, because there were some good things in it, but it's $129 billion over the next 2 years. So as I'm reading through here, although there are good things and necessary things that we must do as a Commonwealth to fund, there was so much in there that I could not vote for the budget. It passed, of course, overwhelmingly, but it was kind of our protest vote, and there was many things that I felt were outside the purview of our job as a state. What is our job? And some of it in there wasn't. So anyways, that was some of the big bills we did. There were other good things. We've got a bill that addresses House Bill 3 that addresses human trafficking. So that's beginning planes, trains, automobiles, truck stops, bus stations. They're having signs for the National Trafficking Hotline in a couple different languages to help people make that contact. We have Safer Kentucky. It was very controversial, certainly for Louisville, but it really is protecting victims of crime. So if you kind of 3 strikes, you're out. If you are a felon and you use a firearm in a commission of another crime, you're out. You don't get to have probation or shortened sentences or things like that. It's getting rid of these homeless camps, the street camping, and a lot of these things that are going on. So a lot of protections for the citizens. We don't have it here in Boone County so much yet, but it's coming. So those are some, I think, proactive things that we did. And then one thing that will be on the ballot in November that we were able to get through after a lot of going back and forth is a constitutional amendment for school choice. So in November, to be a constitutional amendment, you have to have 60%. You have the Kentucky voters get to decide whether or not the legislator may provide state tax dollars to educate students outside of the state's common schools. So that will be you all's decision as taxpayers how you would like to have those monies allocated. So I'm pretty excited about that, and those are kind of the big things. Other things, just briefly, things that I co-sponsored. I got feedback from a lot of you about the tax on the hybrid vehicles. So Representative Towne and I on House Bill 531, we're like, let's get rid of that fee. Didn't go anywhere as a standalone, but we rolled it into House Bill 8, so that should be coming off, and that passed, so that you should no longer have to pay for your hybrid vehicles, which has the internal combustion engine, and then it's a braking system that charges the battery. You don't plug in, you don't have to pay. Other things that we worked on, Representative Rawlings and I do the transfer of death, trying to get rid of inheritance taxes. House Bill 45 for privacy from drones, license plates readers, deep fake states, all those kinds of things. So that privacy, it hasn't passed, but I'm hoping that's one that will pass when we go back. Things we want to get the KEYS scholarship for homeschool children or kids in private school. That's not successful. And we did write a resolution for President Biennial to repeal the invasion of the U.S. southern border. And we implored our governor to do so, but he has not partaken. But we have stood firm for that. And then most of you know my signature legislation was to begin to reform Certificate of Need. And for those of you guys who don't know what that is a permission slip that any health entity that wants to come into the state of Kentucky, there are 32 different services and technologies that they must get a government permission slip to do. So that would be MRI machines, linear accelerators for cancer treatment, PET scans, dialysis, mental health, chemical dependency, ambulatory surgical centers, hospitals. You about name most of your common services. You must get the permission slip to do it. And one of the bills I did got rid of the certificate of need for 7 or 8 specific services, never came out of committee. The one that did come out of committee was actually assigned, that one just eliminated a competitor veto. So the person who has the dominant provider in Northern Kentucky or in Kentucky, if somebody has the means and wants to come in and establish a healthcare facility, they can't be sued out. Many of you know that happened to the Christ They came over, they spent $1.25 million in 3 years, 7 months, waiting for the decision. They did obtain the certificate of need from the state. They went through that whole process, but they were sued out by St. E's and lost. And what's ironic is that very piece of property that they were going to buy and develop is now being developed by St. E's up at the old drawbridge inn. So that to me was a little disappointing that we didn't make headway on that, but I go back and I'm bringing it back again because I believe I heard from you all that you want choices in healthcare. So I'll continue to fight that battle for you. So with that, that is a legislative update in the time we have. I would love to answer any questions, Steve.
I would like to say one thing too, though. I mentioned that Representative Proctor and I have email newsletters and things like that. Actually, I'm inclusive of all of our current representatives and senators in Boone County right now. I think they're all extremely responsive. Representative Rawlings has an email distribution. Senator Williams either has a distribution or he has or he's responsive by email and phone too. So we're all very responsive. Just reach out and we'll give you your cell numbers, things like that. So.
On the Constitution for the school choice, do you know what the specific verbiage is going to be?
I didn't bring that with me. Steve, do you have that with you?
I don't have it with
But I have
The
it.
question was on the specific language of the constitutional amendment.
Yeah, is it going to be confusing and people are going to say, should I vote for this or not?
Not as confusing as it was. It started off notwithstanding section 59, 132, and people are gonna be like, what? So that was actually one of the battles that we engaged with leadership for quite some time on how to make it more readable and more understandable, because you must do it in the affirmative to get this to pass. And most people, they don't understand it, they'll say no. So it's definitely more understandable. I should have brought that with me. I don't have the exact language of it.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know if it's at all feasible, you talked about swapping Hicks Pike being a state road and Chambers would come back as county. Is it possible for Frogtown Rd to be flipped back to county? Because initially it was county when we built there. And somehow or other the state took it over. In the 50 years we've lived there, it has flip-flopped.
I'm not dodging that question, but I don't know the answer. If you send me an email, I will look into it and respond to you with what I can find out.
I have asked that question at KYTC 6, and they would love to give it back to the county, but Judge Moore does not want to take that road back. So I think you're gonna have opposition between state and county on that.
What's his reason for not wanting to take it back? Who are his residents?
Money, because then if the county takes over the road, we're responsible for taking care of it and improving it.
Oh, they could keep the trucks off of it, it would be named.
That's true.
Go girl. I like her.
Yes, sir.
I have several questions. Since my wife and I attend all the planning and zoning meetings as part of our commitment to the county, we have listened to the Planning and Zoning Committee on several occasions when it was brought up as far as higher density living quarters, apartments, condos, et cetera, that the people, you could not talk about losing equity in your home because of those being next door. And you could also not bring up that it would be a public health hazard, because the federal government says that's not permissible to talk about. What gives there? Any thoughts?
What I can tell you is that the opinion of the Planning and Zoning Commission lawyer is that loss of value in your home or property because of the development of something next to you cannot be used as a consideration for approval or denial. So that's the lawyer's opinion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
So we have to sue the lawyer to get it changed?
I actually don't know the answer to that.
Okay, I'll further that.
I'm just telling you what his opinion is.
The next question that I have,
Well,
I'm sorry.
there's a huge push by the Builders Association to get more of the high density, the affordable housing. And when I've asked what is affordable housing, when you can't even build a house less than 2 1/4, that doesn't even count
we've listened to that too.
One of the things that you'll hear is that we are short on houses and housing in Boone County, which theoretically is the case. We don't have enough houses or housing for the amount of people that want to move into the area. But the region cites a study done by somebody from out of state, a company from out of state, that shows the demand for housing in our area is primarily in the rental space. They came and did a presentation to the Fiscal Court saying, and they showed a matrix that showed, with this many bedrooms and in this price range, here's the demand figures for rental versus the same in ownership, et cetera. And I challenged the presenter on this when it came out a few months ago on, that doesn't make sense to me. If you are saying that somebody can get a 1,300 square foot house, 2 bedroom, or a 3-bedroom house for, let's just say $1,600 a month renting, or you can own it for the same price, that they're gonna choose rent, that doesn't make sense. And he said, no, that's true. They probably would choose to own. We're just telling you what the demand figures are. And I said, this is my opinion, it makes sense that we're going to see more rentals built when your price per acre is running at industrial rates in our county because we have so much flat ground. So our commercial and industrial growth is driving the land values out of reach for people to build affordable single-family homes. So if we really want to tackle whether we want to have more apartment and high-density residential, we've really got to figure out a way for developers to buy property at a low enough price point to be able to build affordable single-family. Right now, they're getting forced to do it to make money. They basically can't make money if they buy a piece of property more than $35,000 an acre. They can't make money on a single-family home.
Well, this happened just last night. We listened to a thing that they were trying to change, a zoning thing, to put in 3 more houses to an area that they had already set up for 860 houses. You know how many they've sold in the last 14 years? 68. What's that tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I would say one comment from the city standpoint. So we hear something similar, but what we hear is, not the pitch, I guess, but we'll say is what we hear is, well, so what happens for a lot of folks want to stay here, right? So we change over our house, our home, our kids are gone, we're growing, whatever, so we sell our homes, new families move in, our kids, but the grandparents and their folks want to stay here. There's really no, I guess, place for them to go that's affordable, so to speak. That's the pitch that we kind of hear now for the townhomes, the condominiums, the patio homes, the apartments. That's what it's being geared towards in the city. Is it's being geared towards the older demographic that still wants to stay here, be close to the grandkids, but don't want to pay $500,000 for the home. What alternatives do they have? And so that's why we get the pitches for the apartments and the condos in particular.
Yes.
One other item that actually I'm going to bring up when the comp plan has their open hearing, their public hearing, that no one has addressed, because I've contacted Jenna at the county. There is no record kept for planning and zoning to know how many warehouses we have and how many are empty, and how many apartments we have and how many are empty. And that needs to be so that the planning and zoning knows and people know, there are things available or not.
So one of the things that comes into play, so the question was about, we don't know how many warehouses and things like that we have, but you could apply that same concept to anything. One of the issues that we've dealt with on the Richwood Road here is not necessarily that the property isn't a bad pick for that type of development, it's just really bad timing. So what we don't do, when I say we, I mean the planning commission or even the legislative bodies to some degree, we don't necessarily consider the compounding effect of multiple developments that have been approved but not developed yet. So as an example, when they went for the Jake's Farm last go around, they wanted to put apartments back in there, but Publix has already been approved. St. E's apartment building is already zoned that way. Office building's already been zoned that way. It will be an office building. And we're going to consider the impact of apartments when we don't even know what the traffic impact is going to be for these other projects that have already been approved. So along those same lines, the input that I gave on the comp plan was we should be able to quantify how much is too much of something in our county. And I got pushback on that, but it's a real simple, logical question. If every property in the county was a coffee shop, would we have too many coffee shops? The answer is yes. We all agree on that. So we really agree that it's possible to have too much of something. We just need to figure out where we draw the line. And we need to be able to do that with everything. The other thing we need is we need defined metrics within our comp plan. We need to have a rough idea that we can measure against for either density, types of buildings, how much of what goes where. And the planning commission needs to have that number in front of them when they evaluate the projects that come up. They need to know, we've said in our county, based on our long-term future land use plan, that we think we should have X number of apartment buildings or units in our county total. And if we approve this, we've met 82% of our goal, or we've met 105% of our goal. That measurable metric needs to be in our evaluation that currently is not. So what you'll find when you go to the planning commission meetings, half the time that the commissioners say something about for or against a project, they start their sentence with, well, I feel, or I don't feel. Feelings have nothing to do with it. It should be, what is the metrics, where it's the data. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
On that subject, I know there's no answer to this, but I just want to express my profound disappointment in Union Promenade, that I thought was going to be this beautiful shopping district with non-chain restaurants, and now I find out it's a Chick-fil-A, a UDF, and a lot of abandoned buildings. So now when I drive down 42, I'm going to look at a half-empty Promenade, and then I'm going to go up 42 and look at an abandoned Kroger, and all of that is empty. And then you keep going and you look for like the blind squirrel, and that was empty forever. So I think we seem to build a lot, and it's all with a tenant to be named later. So I'm very disappointed. I think everybody was hoping that would be something really nice in Union, and I don't think anybody's super excited to find out it's a Chick-fil-A. I'm just saying.
I think that you would already have the people, just like the Braxtons or the Dewey's, you would already have people that say, I want this space, I want this space, I'm XYZ school here, ABC school here. Not building, they'll come, we have to have them come, to fill the space. I agree with Laura, it's very disappointing.
Yeah, and some of you may know in this room, so Graders was originally slated to be on the Promenade property, but due to property costs, basically it was more affordable for them to move across the street into the Kroger property, the outlots there. And so that's what drove Graders to move from the Promenade across and then partner with Dewey's and Braxton's, sorry. The original intent was for 3 of those occupants to be across the street, but they simply could not afford the property. So that was part of the challenge, the hurdle that I mentioned earlier. We've heard that time and time again, so how do you solve the problem? And Lloyd, the problem is drop the lot values, right? Drop that and you can make an investment. But right now, it's hard. If you guys remember up in Kroger, I think it was Sugar Fire. I think it was the barbecue place that was there a while. Remember that?
On the pandemic.
Yeah, that did. But I also heard that the rent there a month was like $4,000 or $4,500 plus the utilities plus the rest. Well, that was a very small occupancy. I think there's maybe 20 people total when you went in there. It was very small. And so it's very hard for somebody when there's not a chain to be able to occupy those. I think we all want something niche, or niche, or find something really unique. I don't know what that is, because outside of a chain, they haven't brought us anything and said someone's going to invest.
Why do we build it then so it can sit empty?
Yeah, I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't disagree. And I think that was part of the debate with Aldi. And again, it's here nor there whether or not folks in here were for it or against it. I think there was part of the population that really, again, and I do share some with guys in regard to, I look at everything as what's in the best interest of the citizens of Union. Okay, so there are a lot of people that say, well, I would do that. It would give me an alternative. I could walk there. I could shop there. It does bring traffic to there where maybe you would eat in a different place like Drake's or something if it brought that in. I think it would keep out a lot of the little, in my opinion, nail salons and yoga studios and other things that we have a boatload of those. We don't have a metric, but I would guess if we all drive up down 42, we could probably count 10 of them in addition to things. So it's that. But in all honesty and transparency, what the commission is trying to do in the city is say the same thing, right? We're disappointed in what's there. The downside is, once we agree to that property assessment, that if it's a single unit building and it has 5 tenants or 4 tenants, you really can't say much other than protest what goes in there now. The only time it will come back up is if it's a modification to that layout. And that's what Aldi was. They wanted to really take 2 lots and make it 1. That's why it came up. But if it goes to the commission and it says, hey, it's gonna be a single unit building with 5 tenants, there's very little we could do to knock that down. Like the last meeting we had, that's when they told us it would be Schlotzsky's and a few other things. As long as it was part of an allowable use that was in there, it kind of goes through that process.
Touching on that one though, real quick, so along the same lines, a lot of people think that the fiscal courts and the cities, et cetera, that we approve the actual tenant and unit that comes in. We do not. We only approve the land use. So this goes back to the property rights thing. You know, you want to change your land use, you don't say, I want to change the land use and build a McDonald's. Sometimes you'll come in with a concept plan and we know it's a McDonald's, but we can't discriminate based on the person that's coming in or what they want to build. We have to look very specifically at the use. So if it's commercial 3 and there's 65 uses in there, you know, if it gets approved or if it gets presented to us for approval, we're approving the use, and the zoning, not what's coming in. Now, sometimes if the developer or the owner sees a lot of opposition for certain things, they're oftentimes willing to exclude certain uses, and that goes on the deed of the property and everything else. They might say, yes, I'm allowed to put a nuclear power plant here, but I'm not going to. I'm only going to do this, this, and this. They're sometimes willing to do that, but we can't force them to do it necessarily unless we tell them, look, we don't want. There are some times we can discuss, you know, with them certain things we don't want to see and then feel them out. But at the end of the day, the only thing we can do is vote up or down on the totality of the use.
Reminds me real quick, as he's talking about this, you know, our interest in Triple Crown, there is a design that came in today that Tony Burling has. I spoke with him. It will be at the May HOA meeting, so come.
They don't cancel.
Because that will be, if they don't cancel it. No, that's gonna be where they're gonna approve, where you all get to approve the entrance. They'll have the design. I was asked not to release it because it's not final. They don't have the design cost or exactly what it is. But you will have that input on the May HOA meeting. So I think it's important. What I want you guys to hear a lot of tonight is being proactive, being engaged. We're one step ahead, like with this Jake's Farm. Be active. You guys shut down the apartments that was on the Frogtown connector by showing up and packing out that P&Z meeting that for 3-4 hours. You know, Frogtown, that came from you all. I think it's important to make your voice and know that you are being heard by your city, your county, and your state officials. So just encourage you to keep doing that.
I have a question. I know you talked about in Frogtown about like the houses and the land that you could go to, like fair market value and stuff. So what, does that also like on the land, like if they come and they're taking like a quarter of your front yard and your landscaping and everything, you know, is there, on that link, is there money show the?
There's not. What they do on that, if they're taking part of your property, they look at how much of it does it depreciate the overall value of the house. Like the ones that back up onto Triple Crown, those people, from the road plan I've seen, that comes up to their yard. And because it takes so much of the yard, the state would indeed buy the entire house. So I think there's part of that, but a lot of it is subjective. The state does not do subjective buyouts. They do on market values.
I will say the county on that one, even though we don't really have direct input per se, we are making it very clear to the state that we think they need to hold an open public hearing on that project.
I don't know if you know, but in regards to public and Triple Crown, with the semis coming in to make the deliveries and all the publics, how will they be coming in? Will they be only allowed a certain way, or will they be turning into Triple Crown Boulevard from the circle?
I don't think it's big enough, Barbara, to turn the semi trucks into there because you've seen the cutout, right? They're gonna go up that man of war.
I imagine this is probably the semi-truck access point based on the fishtail design, the fact that this is where their load docks and everything are gonna be in the back. So chances are they're gonna be bringing the trucks in from the back, I think.
Well, that stub out is up on
Don't hold me to that, I'm just saying.
But again, then we got the roundabout issue. They're gonna take up those 2
I
lanes.
think they can even make it through roundabout.
Yeah, but they might be able to come in through Man of War here. Yes?
Chet, you spoke earlier about the investment in land for industrial development. the ideal or preferable?
So I don't even necessarily want to commit to that statement necessarily, because the problem is we have no data. We have no data. I don't know how many industrial buildings we have that are vacant. I don't know. I can tell you for sure that I'm against incentivizing additional, tax incentives and things like that for them to come in. Companies are coming into Boone County for a reason, and I don't think we as a county need to incentivize that. I do think that we should be more strategic about where we put it. And our plan, the problem with our comp plan and even the map of our land use is the language is so vague that you can pretty much put anything, anywhere, at any time with the right argument. The other thing about our comp plan, when our comprehensive plan with our planning commission looking at that for projects that are proposed, is that I think that the comp plan is more of a restrictive document than it is a document allowing people to do things. Because if we wanted to allow people to do whatever they want with their property, the fact that we have zoning laws and we have future land use with the future zoning means that we are intrinsically restricting what people can do. And so I think we need to be more analytical about the projects that come in. And right now there's 112 goals and objectives in the comp plan. 112 that they evaluate against theoretically. And the planning commission will always start their presentations off with, this project satisfies one or more of the goals and objectives in the comp plan. They never say, but it's in conflict with this goal or these 5 goals. In my opinion, if a plan comes through and it's in conflict with one goal and it satisfies 5 more, the one that's in conflict with, because it's intrinsically a restricted document, carries more weight. The planning commission doesn't see it that way. As long as it meets one goal, they're okay with it.
So a quick follow-up in terms of economic development. If you do not do something proactively to incentivize bringing in more of that investment, more of that business investment, right? You're somehow compromising the integrity of our economic future, our welfare moving forward. Growth itself is essential. In order to see growth, we need to incentivize bringing these people in. How do you respond to that general? Because I know one of the things that you value that I think a lot of people in Northern Kentucky really admire is trying to maintain quality of life and not see the culture compromised as
I have 2 comments on that. First off, we are looking for investors in our county, right? So somebody coming in and bringing a business in our county is a new investor in our county. But the folks over there on Frogtown that have lived in their house for 50 years have been an investor in our county for 50 years. Who's to say that, why do we take the new investor and say that person has a higher weight than this person that's been invested in our county for 50 years? And I also think that just because this person has more property and more money doesn't mean that their opinion or their value is any more than this person that has less property or less money. So there's equality here. In that sense, I think we need to focus on keeping, retaining, and taking care of our early investors, not sacrificing them for the sake of new investment. The other thing is, we've had a planning commission, a comp plan and a planning commission for almost 60 years. And if you look at the administration of our county and the people involved in our planning commission, the vast majority of them are the same people involved today that were involved 30 years ago. The problem with that is, 30 years ago, we were a completely different county. We needed a growth trajectory like this at that time. But the same people with the same mindset are making decisions today when really our growth trajectory shouldn't look like this. It should look like this. So the answer to your first question is, I'm not against growth. I'm not against development. I'm not against industrial. I'm not against commercial. I'm not against residential. But I am for carefully planned, strategic, and sustainable development that has a trajectory that looks more like this than like this. That's my opinion. Answer your question. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the higher density homes like Jake's Farm, for example, is there not consideration given to stress on the existing infrastructure in terms of schools, sewers,
way that works is anytime the planning commission receives, they have a very detailed process. Anytime they receive an application or something like this, one of their steps in the process is they reach out to all partners, the school district, SD1, sewer, water district, everything else, and they ask them for input on that project. There's part of the record is that emailed response or written response from those districts saying, yes, this is a problem, or no, it's not, or here's what they need to do, things like that. So yes, there is consideration. A hospital coming into the property?
Children's is, it's not a hospital. Don't let that terminology, it's a medical facility, correct. It won't have like emergency care, it won't have some of those services, but it's basically a medical building. Yeah, it's still coming in. So some of the broken, that's already kind of settled. They're going through a sign ordinance, I believe, or sign variance right now. Again, it's basically how high the sign can be, what colors, that kind of thing. But yes, it still plans on coming in there. Shack's actually ground broken by May. I would think you'll probably see a lot of the dirt being moved at that time.
Last thing I'll mention, we did say we were going to be out of here at 8:30. I'm here till the last one of you leave, so feel free to come up and ask more questions. The only other thing I'll say is, a lot of people, is there anybody here that's not on city water? Okay, never mind then, we won't talk about the rural water plan. All right, any last minute question before we wrap up, or I can talk to anybody afterwards?
That when they get their lines condemned or their septic fields condemned, it's going to run them pretty much about 35 to 40 grand to hook up to this. So the houses that survive the widening process, later on when they go to pull permits, say their septic tank gets, their field gets run down. Now because that sewer line's there, they're going to be forced, they're going to condemn that line, or they're going to condemn that septic system, and they're going to force you onto that sewer, and that's going to cost you a manhole, a grinder pump, all kinds of other stuff that's going to run depending on the backfill. I used to do it for anywhere from 35 to 40 grand for the houses that survive that. Now that's not, you're shrinking the yards, you're removing the natural borders, you're increasing the speed and the traffic, and then on top of that, later on, you're adding a future $30,000.
I think I said again, front yard, okay? I think that's not practical at all. Okay, it's unrealistic for them. So what they're talking about shrinking it, I would oppose it. Money's pushed out. That's not, in my opinion, doable at all. I don't even know why they're doing that now, because they don't really have anything good to hook up yet. It's going to carry that to the interstate court. I mean, Frogtown connectors, so I can't. That's local stuff. That's not state stuff.
We were down to like really specific questions, which I'm sure Senator Williams, he is definitely the expert on transportation. If you want to ask him, he'll be around, and we're up here as well. I thank you guys for coming and being so attentive. And I appreciate